Begin the current Daf Mesech Nedarim Daf Ayin Test. Begin to the bottom of Ayin Test on base 2 lines up at the bottom of the Yomim. The Gemara is in the middle of a discussion with interesting halacha of Chanina. That he said that we know this halacha about Kama and Afara, and there's two ways about Kama. There's the act about Kama, and then there's the passive about Kama. If he hears about it, it's not made for 24 hours or for a day, so then it's automatically a Kama. And he said an interesting halacha. If someone is quiet just because he wants to provoke his wife, she should be afraid that he's being Mekayim it. Actually can be made for up until 10 days because he doesn't have in mind to really do a hakama. And then it doesn't have this halakha of a passive hakama. The Gemara continues asking on his opinion. The Gemara is going to have many refutations of his opinion. And that's how the Gemara is going to conclude as the shiur on this halakha. Should goes back to the today's daf. So this is discussing today's daf. We're going to start the next parak. Nedarim. We can talk about this halacha of hafara, like it says in the pasuk, Ishi Kamen Bishi. For them, that the husband has the ability to validate or to nullify it. Now, however, the Mishnah is going to tell that this power is limited to the Nedarim that involve Dvar Mishel Inu Nefesh, things that are afflicting, and to a lesser degree, the Gemara is going to tell us of Nedarim should be when the things regarding their relationship that affects them, that also he has the ability, those two categories, to nullify Nedarim. So to Hafar Sa'ab is also because we compare Ben Ishla Ishla Ben Lavitai, just like the way the husband is to the wife, that's how the father is to the daughter. They're limited to those types of Nedarim. So begin to go down. When the bottom of my Chesam base, tools up at the bottom of the Yom, we had mentioned in the previous chapter, of a Shaisik of an naked. He's quiet because he wants to provoke his wife. So then he said, although generally limited for 24 hours for a day, he says, no, you can do it for 10 days because wait, he doesn't have intended to sit around. He wants to do it afterwards. He just wants to get her upset. However, the Gemara asks from many different sources. We begin on the second line up and bottom of the Yom. Most of the Chizah asks in the following brayso. The brayso says, there's a stringency of the halacha of being Mekayim and that of nullifying it, and you also have a stringency that hafara has about Kama. These are two different options that he has, and each one has a certain stringency. What's the stringency? He says the the stringency of Hakama is continued by test it out. Because interesting, you could have Shtika being Mekayim, meaning he's quiet the entire day that he hears it, but Shtika, silence, is not nullifying a vow. You see, that's a chumrah of kiyum, that even just being quiet, you could do Hakama, what we call a passive Hakama. Additionally, Kayim, Beliboy, Kayim, in his heart, he just wants this neder to happen. He doesn't have to say anything with his lips. It's going to be a kiyum. Whereas Hafa Beliboy in the mufra, if you want to do Hafara in your heart, you don't want the neder, it's not considered Hafara until you actually enunciate it with your lips. Which Ran says, near Beinai, it seems to me, said that you learn it out, that from the halacha of that we say, if you're quiet for B'yom Shammai, it's Mekuyim. Says the Ran, what's the reason for this? And some people had asked on this halacha of Rabbi Chanina on the previous daf. You could understand the lumdus where the Ran explains that because since the day he heard about it passed and he didn't do that halacha, so it's a gilul das. It's revealing his intention that he wants the validation of this neder. Oh, obviously you see whatever is in his heart to be mekayim, that's sufficient. You don't have to actually enunciate it. Just the Torah says that you get that whole day for hafara. Why? Because up until sundown. And it's very important. So that's not obvious that you want it to happen because maybe you're going to give yourself a few hours to be made for it. And since we're going after his intention, so here we see that the kiyum in the lave is what's the primary point. And therefore, if you actually do want it, the kiyum happens right away. It's as if you already passed the Yom HaShmiyah. Just in general, we don't know until the whole day passes. But if you want it, dos teis hakama. And when we say over here, Duran points out, Hafa Beliba Ain Hafa, that doing it in the heart is not considered Hafara, that specifically he doesn't tell her, Fli Achli, go take and eat. But if he tells her that we already said that Ayin Zayin Rabbeis, according to Basil, whatever, B'Shabbos, Shabbos, weekday, that would be sufficient. So, but if you didn't do anything more than just Hafara in the lake, that wouldn't work. Again, this is parenthetical, we just want to bring out a point, but this is the brayso that says these are two stringencies that Hakama has, that A, Shtika works, and also B, that Beliboy works. Versus Hafara, it's not enough Beliboy and you have to actually enunciate it. Now, but one thing says the Gemara, and then it says, moreover, is Kayim, another stringency is, a third one is, that Ein Yochel Hafra. When you do a kiyum, you can't do hafara anymore. Actually, it's not a stringency, like the Ram points out. Hafara, you do hafara, you can't do kiyum. The Ram says no. It's not a stringency about kama from hafara of kama. It's not because of stringency. Just we're simply teaching you in this price of laws about kama and hafara. We just counted this also, but it just means when you do one, you can't do the other. Fine. It says the rice of Katani, one thing we see is shashtika mekayanis. You're telling me that just by being quiet, that's going to create a key, and that was stringency number one. You said that I come out of hafara. My love, isn't it talking about the shayzik and that's naked? That even if you're quiet with the intention of provoking her and not with the intention of kiyum, because you told me without specifying shashtika mekayanis, as long as the day of the shmiyah passed. That seems to refute this teaching of Reb Chanina. So no, not necessarily. It's the shaysik amanas l'kayim. When you're quiet with the intention of validating it. You want the Nedarim Daf right now, but if you were quiet just to provoke, no, then it wouldn't be outcome. Says Gemara, if that's the case, how do you kind believe a kain? You already mentioned the other halacha. There's two stringencies you said. You said shashtika megemes, and you said number two, kain believe a kain. If you're intending for it to be a neder, that's the second stringency of kain believe it. What do you have to say? Shashtika megemes for. Says the Gemara, no, you're right. It's not that he was shashtika megemes kain. It's el b'shashik stam. He was quiet without specifying. So there's three categories. There's shaysik amanas le-kayim, there's shaysik amanas le-hafir, and there's shaysik stam. So shaysik stam and also shaysik amanas le-kayim, those two would be considered as a kiyum. Shaysik amanas le-hafir, meaning like you want to just provoke her to make it, yeah, maybe that you can get 10 days. But the Gemara asks on the Brisa, so we answered the question. It's not difficult on Reb Chanina, but the Gemara asked, the Brisa told us what's the stringency that had come out of my which Ran says the word menolan is not really precise. Doesn't mean we know it from. We're just asking what it is. What is the stringency that hafara has over hakama? You told me hakama hafara. What's the other way around? So Rabbi Yechanan, he says the stringency is that nishalin al hahekem, that you could go to the Rav, and if let's say you were makayim the neder, you could go and ask him on the day of the shmiyah, and you could say acharata on my hakama, which is essentially like a neder that you're doing on hard neder, and you can be meifir that day. But you cannot be shy, you can't undo a hafara that you did, because if you did a hafara, you can't go to the Rav and move up to that hafara because you already nullified on neder. There's nothing to undo. You already can't undo what you undid already. So therefore, that's the stringency. Those are the three distinctions between hakama and hafara. First two are stringencies of hakama over hafara, and then third one is hafara over hakama. Okay, fine. But most of the Rav Kahana continues to ask on this teaching of Chanina the following brisa. The brisa says, according to Pasuk Midbar, says that if her husband is going to be silent, etc., says the brisa, this is the shaysik amnas lemekar kasadav. The pasuk talking about if you're quiet with intention of provoking her, that's what the pasuk is saying. That still, if you're silent, it's going to be a hakama. As the brisa explains. Do you really say it's shaysik amnas lemekar when he's quiet with intention of provoking? Maybe it's shaysik amnas lekayim. Maybe it's only when he's quiet with intention of validating. Then it's going to be a validation. Oh, so the brisa of the pasuk says ki hachadish lo. There's two times it says the im hachadish ashkala and it says ki hachadish lo. So I already have a ki hachadish lo. The pasuk already tells me when your intention of being quiet was to be mekayim, which the Ram just points out, meaning with his intention to be mekayim at a later point in time. Meaning his intention is that when the day passes of the day when he heard about it, it's going to be mekayim. But if let's say his intention is not to be mekayim, meaning his intention is not to become right now with the silence, because if that would be the case, how can he make for the whole day of the years? Meaning the pasuk says that he gets a choice.
What's the aim? What's the chayit going on?
No, meaning
it has to teach you something.
No, it says the pasuk in Bamid Lamed Tezvav says like this: the husband's going to be quiet for that whole day. He's going to validate for a whole neder, or his kol sarah, or a whole prohibition that's honor. Hekim oisam validates it. Because he was silent for her on the day that he heard it. So in this pasuk, you have two times when it says him being quiet. It already says one time about him being quiet, which that would be the one when he's being quiet for the lesser chiddush of with the intention of being mekayim. To tell you, even if he's being shaysik amanas, let make it to provoke. that's what's going to refute the Chanina. You see that it is considered hakam. Around just explaining that this was saying when he's chasing a master kayin doesn't mean to be it right now. It's not the same terminology, he says, as what we mentioned before, chasing a master kayin, because that was right now that comes to the if you want it right now. Here it just means the chasing a master kayin. You'd say when the day passes, because else you wouldn't be able to do hafar for the rest of the day. You get a whole 24-hour period. How do you get hafar? How do you do chasing a master kayin? That's hachar shachar. No, it just means he's still. But his intention is that when the day passes, it's going to be hakam. Now, so then, if that's the case, if ki hafresh law is already telling me shezigim nasakayim, so man mekayim. So what am I doing with the other words of the pasuk? Im hafresh hafresh law isha. What is that telling me? If he's being quiet. That's telling me that he's being quiet when the intention provoked her. And you see that even over there, it's going to be a hakama after 24 hours. You see, even in that halacha, you don't get 10 days. You only get 1 day. It says, well, why? Why is this reputation? But like him, you have 2 times it says charisha about being quiet. Say one is talking about b'shezim masakayim, which that's the least chiddush, which you mamish doing it quiet because you want it to be validated in a passive aggressive way, the way you always are with your wife. You don't say anything, you just whatever, and then passively you're going to have it cause that she's going to have this neder. And the second one, b'shezim stam, where you quiet without specifying, which we always make a differentiation all along in these dafim. And who said it's going to be even a chiddush of b'shezim manas lamekit? Where'd you get that idea from? So the Gemara, good question, but Kro Yisei Ksib. There's a lot of psukim, as the Ran explains, meaning in our one pasuk there's really 3 psukim. Why? Because you have hachrish yachrish, which is a double terminology, and you have kehachrish la, which is a third terminology. So you have one which is shezigim manas akayim, one shezigim manas shezigim stam, and you have one shezigim manas naked. We're getting 3 terms. So that's how I know the halacha of even shezigim manas naked is going to be considered as a kiyuv, and that's the reputation of Chanina, who said it's not a kiyuv. Okay, but now Masa Rabba asked another question on Rabbi Chanina from our Mishnah, which the Ran says, even though we just refuted him 1 time, we will refute him a 2nd time, and enough coming is because if any time it happens that someone's going to have an answer for the first reputation, we still have another reputation. Our Mishnah said as follows. We said, Nodrim Chasheicha, let's say a woman mamish took Shalosh Shudas time. She's taking a neder 10 minutes before there's man of Shkia, she takes a neder. So we said, we could do a hafara up until it doesn't get dark. Because the Mishnah said, it's not going to do hafara, it's going to get dark, and you have a hafara. Cannot do hafara anymore, as we explained in the Mishnah, that it's explaining the reason why you let do the hafara on Shabbos, even though it's not for a Shabbos. Because since the time is passing, you're going to be running out of your options. So therefore, you can do that hafara. Okay. But ask the Gemara a very beautiful question based on this halacha of Chanina. Amai, why? It should be a guy who, it should be just like the case like I was quiet with the intention of provoking his wife. In other words, as Ron explains, if you tell me like Rabbi Chanina, when you're shaysikim nasla you could be made for 10 days because that hakama was not what the intent of real Mevekayim and Neder. Oh, so wait a second. So for sure, if the Rabbanan would tell you that you cannot do Hafavos Nadam on Shabbos and it's not for Shabbos Eid, of course you can do Hafavos Nadam on Matzah Shabbos. Because just that you quiet on Shabbos was not Makiyim, it's not because you cannot do Hafavah. How could it be less than Shezim Haslameka when you quiet just because you're playing a prank on your wife? Obviously, it sounds like that, every Shnika is automatically Makayim. I don't care what your reasoning was. Time's up. I don't care if you had all the best excuses in the world. The dog ate your homework, you stuck up behind the bus. I don't care. You have to see what? Building reputation around Mishnah. There's a lot of Chanina. We see Shtika is Mekayim no matter what. Even if that was not your intent, even if the halacha didn't let you. Doesn't make a difference. And therefore, that's a second reputation. Beautiful. Gemara says another reputation. Mazur Rashi asked from a Mishnah on Daf Pizayin base. Mishnah says, and we'll see this later on, I expect, that let's say the husband says, he says, I knew that they were Nedarim, meaning that the Nedarim that my wife took, I knew that those were considered Nedarim. Says, but I didn't know, on the day that I heard it, I didn't know that a husband has the ability to be made for the Nedarim of his wife. I didn't know my wife's Nedarim. Ich can make for that. The halacha is Yofer. So the day that he finds out that a husband can do hafara, that day for him, it's like a lom d'shazach, is Yom Shmiyah, is B'Yom Shammai. Also, you can say, Yishma Yisrael, Yisrael Nishki, bad. He understood, like, now you heard it. You never heard of it. Because up until it's not considered Yom Shmiyah, that's only when you know the halacha of halacha. Fine. But let's say he says, you didn't issue for it. No, I knew that a husband could be done. Any dish is in neder. What does that mean? Not that it doesn't that I didn't know this is a neder. Like the Ran explained, I didn't know this from the nedarim that a husband could be made for. Because there are certain limitations, as we'll see, mamish in a few lines when we start the next pair. There are only certain types of nedarim the husband can be made for. So what happens if he says such a claim? So Rabbi says, okay, then loy yafer. Okay, now you cannot be made for after the day of Yuri, because since you knew that the husband could be made for the name of your wife, and you heard the Nedarim, or you didn't know this time of neder, that's already, you already had your Yom Shmiyah, can't be made for anymore. No, they say yafer. You could do the hafal, because since you didn't know that you could make for this neder, that's not considered Yom Shmiyah. Okay, fine, that we'll see in the next part. But says the Gemara, why? If you hold a good chanina, that when you quiet the intention of provoking, you don't really want to be king. You could do hafara for like 10 days. So why is the mayor saying that you could not do hafara? Because he was only quiet only because he didn't know that you could be neighbor. So naked. It should be like when you're quiet with intention of provoking. Why is the mayor saying you cannot be neighbor? Obviously, because if even your shows go naked, it's still going to be considered as a shnika. And even the Ram points out, even the Rabbanan who disagrees with it, only because they hold that it's not considered as a shmiyah, but had it been a shmiyah, they would agree that yeah, you cannot be made for it. Obviously, it sounds like that if you heard with the intention of provoking, you could not be made. It is considered as a shnika. Says the Gemara, to use the reputation, another one of Chanina, and therefore we rule that if someone is shaysik of nas and naked, if someone's quiet with the intention of provoking his wife, it's the same halacha like being stam quiet, and therefore you can only be made for on the day that he hears it. And moreover, if you're shaysik less like kayim, la'alter, then you actually cannot do hafar even on that same day. Like the Rambam explained that you offer that kiyum beliba is considered kiyum. That's going to happen right away. In general, usually we don't know if we would have to live at one point of our past. Which I returned to the 10th parak in the Mesechus Nedarim, we spoke about primarily this of the Nagras, which is the unique halacha of a betrothed maiden who we said avio bailam afim the Nadarim, that was the shutvis, the swekin, we spoke about all these different things about their dual relationship over here with the girl. Now we begin the 11th parak, the Eilu Nedarim, which this parak speaks about primarily that which Nedarim the husband has the ability to revoke, as it says, these are the vows that he could nullify, which is the theme we just spoke about in the previous parak. And so too, as Ram points out, that the father can be made for his daughter, they have the same limitations. What are they? They have to be what's called devarim sheyesh ben inu nefesh. Has to be things that afflict the soul. As the Gemara is going to explain on the base, that really the same thing is also he can be made for what's called shebeino yubeino. That's also in between them that affects their relationship. The reason why we're picking specifically inu nefesh is because, as we'll see in the Gemara, those are the dom that it can be totally be made for, whether for himself or for others. Whereas when it's regarding things that's between him and her, that he won't be able to be made for others. He can only be made for himself, as we'll see this in the Gemara. So that's why we picked the more absolute example, which is that of inu nefesh. What are examples of inu nefesh that is self-afflicting? If let's say she takes an neder, if I'm going to bathe, if I'm not going to bathe, the Gemara is going to explain exactly what does it mean, but what's that? That's not a neder, that's what's if. So the Gemara is going to explain what exactly the case is. If you're skashed, if I'm going to put on makeup, and when skashed, if I'm not going to put on makeup, which the Ram just explains, it means space makeup, like lipstick and all these other types of things, because regarding that the Rabbanan hold that you could do hafara because it's considered neder in the nefesh. But if we talk about the lower face, even the Rabbanan would agree to Rabbi Yisi that that's not considered neder in the nefesh. That would be considered something that's regarding intimacy, as obviously the Gemara of Kema Beis that we're talking about the kishut, the adornment of the upper face, and that's where it's considered the dam of inu nefesh if she doesn't put on makeup. Now, as continued to Beis, that's the opinion of the Chachams. However, Rabbi Yisi said no, ein elu nidrin nefesh. He's not considered the dam of inu nefesh, And the Gemara is going to explain on page Beis according to Yesi, you're right, it's not a neder in the nefesh, so it doesn't have such an absolute, such a strong halacha, but it is considered dvam shebeinah lebeinah. It is considered according to him. If she bathes or if she puts on makeup, it is considered as regarding affecting their intimate life. But says Rabbi Yisi, I'll tell you what's considered the darn of affliction, which this is the conclusion of Rabbi Yisi's statement. If Amr, she says, says, I'm taking neder, I'm not having any fruits from the whole world. So crazy. Obviously, but that's considered as something that's very difficult. It's afflicting a person that they make such a neder. But let's say let's say she takes a neder that only the payers of this country, of this state, of this city that she make on her. Okay, you give her the then you can bring her from another country because since she committed to eat food from another country, that's not said in the neder. So he wouldn't be able to be made for that neder. Now, let's say she says, Peres Chanan Mizel. She has a certain store, I'm taking a neder, I'm not having from that store. And you're loving it, that's not because they eat it. Don't get from that store. But let's say the husband's whole sustenance was only from that store because every store blocked him already. There's the one store that gives him credit, even though he has this $2,000 outstanding balance. So he's not going to find some other store to give him credit. And sometimes he's not going to have money, and it's going to come out that she's going to be afflicted because of that. So therefore, Arize Yoffer, the Rabbi Yisi says that yes, in this situation, you could be made from. And actually, as the Rav points out, logic would tell us, according to Yisi also, that let's say she takes a neder from the parents of the country that she lives in, he could also be made from because that's not any less than the store which gives him credit. And this that we said that he could bring from another country is only if she didn't take a neder from the country that she actually lives in. The Gemara is going to explain why do we have to end off the Rabbi Yisi if this is a continuation of what we just said before of Rabbi Yisi, this older piece. Why do you have to go on? Okay, but the Gemara makes the following deal. You told me in the Mishnah, okay, what the Nadarim that husband could be made for? But even the Nadarim the title of this parent, what can he be made for? Nidri in the nefesh. You told me, think of the soul, showering and makeup. That's who the made for. That's what he can be made for. Sounds like Shane in the nefesh ain't made for. There's no afflicting the soul. He cannot be made for. I go telling you what the Bryce and Nishta does. The Bryce says the pasuk in my mid says that these are the chukim hashatim hashemas Moshe bein ish leishtoi ben av lebita, between a man and his wife and between the father and his daughter. What does that mean between them? What's this relational aspect that you're discussing? What does that have to do with the Nadarim? Malama comes to teach about me for the Nadarim should be a little bit up. The husband can nullify vows that are affecting their relationship. That's even if it's not in a nefesh. So they said, yes, true, but it's not a contradiction. Because halin v'halin nation. You're right, both of them need to be made for. But miu is a difference. And therefore our Mishnah picked the more absolute one, the more extreme one. Even nefesh made from oil. If it's afflicting this soul, that hafara will be forever. But if it's not something affecting her soul, then when she's living with him, that's considered hafara because that's really what it is, because it's affecting the relationship. When he divorces her, then the neder is going to take effect. And actually, as the Ram says, she then becomes forbidden in a neder, even if he remarries. Even if she goes and gets remarried. Again, there's differences in the Rishonim how to explain this, but then it's going to take re-effect. It's only when they're married, when they're the bottom should be then it doesn't take effect. The moment she gets divorced, it will take effect. And that's what the Gemara explains. Regarding something of the intimate life, there's no afflicting the soul, that's where it's going to take effect after they get divorced. As afflicting the soul, it's not going to take effect when she gets divorced, and that's the case that we said in the Mishnah when we picked this halacha. But you're right, it would also be for dvarim shebeinah lebeinah just on a lesser level. That's the Gemara. Is that really so? Regarding people that don't have afflicting the soul, when they divorce it does take effect, but it's not true. We learned in the Mishnah that the beginning of that Mishnah says, if let's say a woman says, I'm taking a neder, whatever I make is forbidden for you to eat. Then the Mishnah says he doesn't have to do hafava because she's meshubatim, she's indebted to him. And the Rabbanan made the shibud that she has to the husband so strong that even a neder will not be able to remove that. That's the first part of the Mishnah. Then the Mishnah continues to begin the Nudri. He says, Yofer. No, he should do hafava. Why do you have to do hafava? I thought the shibud of the husband is so strong. Because if you don't do hafava, he might divorce her. And she's going to be forbidden to him because the neder is going to take effect when he divorces her. So then what's the problem? Either divorce, he's not going to be able to remarry her because he might have benefit from her. So then do that hafava because you might divorce her, you might want to remarry her, and you're not going to be able to at that point. So we see When he divorces her, if what's the Rabbi say? Say, do have father. Because if you don't have father, it's going to take effect, not going to remarry. Sounds like. But if you do have father at the beginning, how the father is going to have father, and then even after divorce, then it's not going to take effect. Because that was the whole point. Why you're going to hell to do have father? Wait a second. Her Maisia then, when she makes that brownie cake, it's not inu nefesh. It's dvarim shebein elabinah. It affects their relationship. But didn't you just tell me that by dvarim shebein elabinah, that when there's gerushin, it does take effect? That refutes the answer that we gave to make that differentiation. So the Gemara comes up with a new chiluk. Already said something similar but different. That halin v'halin have yafal. You're right. Both by inu nefesh and by dvarim shebein elabinah, it's going to be yafal. The difference is like as follows. Nidre inu nefesh. When it's regarding affecting our soul, mefer his afar is affected. Bein la'atzmoi. The way the Ram explains this is different Rishonim what we have explained it, but said whether it's something that a fit to affect the essence of the husband himself, the mefer, or whether for others, meaning even if he divorces her and she marries someone else, doesn't make a difference. Inu nefesh, he could be mavatul, he could be mefer. But in inu nefesh, if there is no inu nefesh, rather it's just Yivamish ben el la'atzmai mefer, he can only go ahead and be mefer for himself forever, or only effective la'atzmai as long as it's relevant to him. To the extent that it can cause friction with Nelabana, then it means nullified regarding him and others while she's married. And those after years she might want to remarry her. But la'achayim ain't a mefer, which because she got married to someone else, so then his afar from that is going to take effect. And actually, that's actually what the Mishnah is telling us. When we say in the Mishnah opening of this parak, even the Dam Shu made for these and the Dam that be made Bein la'atzmai or bein la'achayim, because since you said made for Stam, that sounds like an eternal hafal, which would mean no matter as long as he's married to her or not, even if she's marrying someone else. That's Nedarim. What type of Neder would be forever, in contrast to Dvarim shebein benah, which takes effect when it is la'achayim after Nisuah. That's Nedarim shebein benah. Only if it's a Neder affecting the soul, because it's bein benah, that would not be forever.
It turns out that it's going to affect when she marries someone else, not when she gets divorced.
Yeah.
She stays divorced.
Oh no, or even if when she gets divorced, it's going to be it's not. Well, it depends how you learn.
The Ran said,
right. Yeah, we do make it sound like that.
Because he might always take it back.
But the only thing is, why would it be when it's la'achayim? Yeah, I mean, it depends if it's for him or not. Yeah, that's the Rishonim, they differentiate if it's only effective regarding him or versus others. L'chayim would be, yeah, maybe no, because once she marries someone else, you cannot remarry her. Right, that's what you're trying to say, right? Because even if you divorce her, you might remarry her, so then it might still affect. Yeah, that's the L'chayim with the Ran. Now, the next point that the Mishnah had said, so what is the cases of Inu Nefesh? Mishnah says Im Erchat, which is going to get us into a conversation starting for the next Daf. If I bathe. So the Gemara says, Hecha Kamra. I guess it really, like the Ran says, Hecha Kamra. What does she say? Because you can't say Kayim on Im. Kayim Im Erchat, what does that mean? A Neder if I bathe? What type of Neder is that? What's Im Erchat, Im Lo Erchat? So the Gemara goes through that it sounds like that it's a condition for a neder. Even if you think the way she says, okay, I'll take a neder for prohibiting all the privileges of the world on me. In erchas, so it's a condition. If I bathe, that's the neder. So says the Gemara, I don't understand. Why does she need it? Why is there hafar over here? Loy tirchat, don't bathe. The biggest things in the word elu, Allah. The Ran explains. But the fact that the Mishnah did not say, for example, that she took a neder in just bathing itself, obviously, this is how the Gemara's understanding at this point, that by bathing there's no inui. And since there's no inui, so what do you need hafar for? Ran goes a little bit deeper. He says, the fact that he's saying this wording of lamal hafar, and also the Gemara's next question, which the Gemara says, moreover, all labor Ravisi, this Ravisi is going to say, Ein Elu did your end nefesh? Not the double in nefesh? What do you mean? So maybe she is going to bathe, and then the person is going to be forbidden on her. So the Gemara's question was, wait a second, don't bathe, and don't have the periods to look forbidden. That sounds like, as long as she doesn't bathe, so then the period's not forbidden on her. I'm not concerned that maybe she's going to bathe. Ron asked a very interesting question. That we had said that Bidalma bathes. And let's say someone says, we take a head I'm not going to sleep today if I sleep tomorrow. So that Rabbi Yehuda said, don't sleep today. I'm concerned because you might sleep tomorrow because we're not careful with tonight, with conditions. Says around, so wait a second, here also why we should be concerned. Maybe she's going to bathe, and then all the periods will become forbidden. So why are we saying that there's no concern? There's no problem here at all to require afar. But I thought we're not going to be careful with conditions. So she might bathe, and then she will be forbidden. Says around, it's not difficult because if she says explicitly, I'm making all the periods will forbidden only today, from today. If I bathe, she's right, that would be a problem. The moment she bathes, all those periods are going to be forbidden. But if that's not sounding like it's going to take effect right now, it's only going to be when she goes and she takes the shower, so then we'll worry about it then. But there's no problem at this point right now. So that was one question. And like we said, the second question is that I think the Gemara is going to try to figure out what the case is over here. Is that if you say it's talking about that kohen periods are in Erchad, so what should we see saying these are not in the nefesh? What do you mean? As the Ran explained, the Gemara is not asking on the halacha of the base that how could Rabbi Yoshi say that lo yofer, maybe she's in the bathe. That's not true because we asked the exact opposite on the Tanakh. Tanakh we said don't bathe, and the prayer will not be forbidden. So I asked you on your BC, how can you say it's not a problem? She might shout. Well, you just told me the exact opposite. I mean, there is no reason to be made. Don't shout. So you can't ask the exact opposite on BC. Rather, the wording is what we find. BC's words in our mission to say when it comes to regarding bathing and makeup. He says, it sounds like that he does not disagree on the concern of the Tanakama that maybe she didn't bathe. He's just saying that even so, it's not going to be a neder in an nefesh. Well, that's definitely difficult because since you agree that maybe she didn't bathe, so and that's what we actually have question number one on the Tanakama. Well, why are we concerned with that? Okay, fine. But the Tanakama is concerned, but it sounds like a BC also is concerned. He's just saying, but there's no neder in the nefesh. Sounds like on the ikin neder. The problem is the ikin neder. If you tell me that is regarding eating pears oilmalai, well, that is neder in the nefesh. And if you tell me that he does not agree that maybe you're going to be, then he should have said the following words: "Ein yoch lahafim mishum neder in nefesh." It cannot be made because of done in the nefesh, which that would sound like, in other words, that is not going to take effect, like in the nefesh, with the pears oilam, because she's not going to bathe. But it's not his words. His words are in alien in nefesh. What is not neder? It is neder in nefesh. It's you're confringing my base. So the ramification is all pairs on the line. So how can you say it's not nefesh? The Gemara doesn't like this interpretation, and we'll continue on the next step regarding the next possible interpretation. Anytime. Okay, guys.